In Afghanistan, the effect of implementing Sharia law was with total suppression of the heroin industry and the decimation of the world's supply of heroin.
And a massive reduction in the rape of boys. They didn't like that.
That's another subject that's absolutely part of this, and I almost hesitate to go there because it is a parallel. Everything I'm saying about drugs could also be talked about. I can't believe I'm even saying this, but child sex trafficking was something that took place. That was something that the U.S.-backed client state was deeply implicated in child sex trafficking. Another thing that's falsely laid at the feet of the Taliban and said, this is just part of Afghan culture, when that is not true. But to return to the heroin thing, it was actually in the summer of 2001.
Do you feel like your mind explodes with when you start to understand what the truth is? Just the layers of propaganda that attach like barnacles to your brain when they come off. You're like, I don't even recognize this world. Do you feel that ever?
In this case, yes, because although I had served in the military and worked as a war reporter, I'd actually never been to Afghanistan. So I had to educate myself on the Afghan war, starting from scratch. And what I learned was that the Taliban eliminated the drug industry just months before the U.S. invaded. The DEA and the UN certified the eradication campaign that the Taliban had carried out. And when the U.S. invaded in 2001, they teamed up with the exact same narco warlords that had previously ruled Afghanistan, what we call the Northern Alliance. And those people took over, and Hamid Karzai was installed as CIA puppet president of Afghanistan and immediately legalized poppy production in Afghanistan. And within the span of, let's say, 2 years, maybe 3 years, heroin production increased something like 7,000 or 8,000% in Afghanistan. And
of course, a lot of it winds up in Europe and the United States, correct?
Yes. You have, like I said, more heroin than the world can even absorb.
Why would the U.S. authorities, why would the CIA, why would the White House allow that?
My view, there's a paranoid point of view, conspiratorial point of view among people who believe that this is some kind of societal program, there's some nefarious program that the U.S. government wants the whole world to be inundated with heroin. I personally am more inclined to the view that they just don't care, and that these type of mercenary drug traffickers make natural allies to a foreign power that's invading your country.
Is there a difference between negligence and malice? If I leave my toddler in the car with the windows closed on a hot day to go gamble at a casino and he suffocates, does it matter if I wanted to kill him or if I just didn't care enough?
No, I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter.
And I'm not making an excuse for
No, I know you're not. I'm just like... the bottom line is that U.S. authorities, the Bush administration, and then the Obama administration, and then, up until the end, up until the Biden administration, allowed the United States and its citizens to die of drug ODs because the country that they were running, Afghanistan, was producing all the heroin. Right? I mean,
yes. The amount of heroin that was being produced was very potent, high quality, and large amounts of it. So that obviously supply and demand depressed prices. And you have ample reporting. It's not just Europe and Australia and Asia that's being flooded by heroin. Also, the United States in this time saw a massive increase in supply. Now, here's where the cover-up comes in. Because all of this was well reported up until the late 2000s, let's say 2007 or so. That's when the DEA started putting out statements to the effect that although there was rising heroin supplies in the United States, they claimed that none of it was coming from Afghanistan. Less than 1% is the official figure. And so in the process of writing this book, I spent a lot of time in the weeds trying to figure out how exactly the DEA made this determination, because it's kind of like saying no oil from Saudi Arabia ever gets burned in the United States. You ask, how is that possible that the world's largest consumer of drugs is not importing any drugs from the world's largest producer of drugs?
Which, by the way, it controls.
Which it controls, yeah. That seems to defy reason, yeah.
Yes, it does.
If you read the book, you will see that I get deep in the nitty-gritty of it, down to the actual mathematics of it. But suffice it to say, I find that that statistic was totally bogus and invented as a way to cover up the fact this incredibly damaging effect of the war in Afghanistan had on U.S. society.
So I guess another way to say that would be, in fact, a lot of heroin from our client state, Afghanistan, was winding up in American cities.
Absolutely. And especially the China, what's called China white heroin. It's called China because of its color, not because it actually comes from China. Now, the picture is slightly confounded because there was also a lot of Mexican heroin coming to the United States during the same time. But Mexican heroin is black in color and low in quality. It's called black tar heroin.
Yeah. It's usually smoked.
Right. And it was the China white that really flooded the U.S. during this time period and caused the most damage, especially in the Northeast and in Appalachia and in the Midwest, because that's where flights from Afghanistan come. It's all trafficked through airports on the eastern seaboard, whereas Mexico kind of supplies the west of the United States and the south.
Right. That's why Jerry Garcia was a black tar addict in Marin County, California, and all the junkies in Philadelphia are using China white.
Right, right. And the China white, because it's so much more potent, is what leads to all of the huge overdose crisis that we suffered during these years.
Pretty hard to OD from smoking heroin. Possible, but hard.
That's my understanding, yeah.
So who profited from that?
That's a very good question. Not the people of Afghanistan. The numbers that I've seen suggest that maybe $1 billion a year was the profits that went to Afghans of one type or another. The majority of it went to drug supply chains outside of Afghanistan, and that's the most opaque aspect of all of this. And that's where I have the most unanswered questions. Who exactly was making all of this money? And was something that happened while I was writing the book, not too long ago, in fact, which was that, the Taliban took over after the U.S. withdrew in 21 and then proceeded to do exactly what they had done in the year 2000 and 2001, which was to completely eradicate all drugs from the country. And up until then, we had been told, to the extent that drug production in Afghanistan came up, we were always told that it was the Taliban and that the insurgency and the drug production were just two sides of the same coin.
Liars, yes.
But the best lies are the ones that are 180-degree opposite of the truth.
Exactly.
And what made it, what gave me the, gave me the confidence to really, to hit as hard as I could in this narrative was seeing the Taliban in 2023. They completed another eradication campaign where they once again totally eliminated heroin production and drug production from Afghanistan. So at that point, I had doubts as a reporter because I'm not omniscient and, there's always this conflicting information. So I kind of doubt my own conclusions. I'm thinking, well, they must have been involved to some degree. We hear that said so often from the most prestigious institutions of media and government. There must be some truth to it. But seeing the Taliban totally eliminate drugs from their country again made me realize, okay, this was always a one-sided thing. It wasn't that both sides were involved in it. And like I said, that didn't happen until 2023. And that's what I think makes it possible to tell the true story of Afghanistan for the first time.
You want to get really red-pilled? You want to make it almost hard to live here? Look up Taliban drug treatment. You're in your early 40s, I think. So you've lived in this country a long time, and you must know people who've been ensnared in drugs or died from drugs. I know, and you live here. So you know people who become addicted to drugs and can't get off. And I know a lot of them, and most are dead. Ask yourself, super simple question. Is the Taliban drug treatment program, you can look this up, there are videos of it online.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Does it produce a higher or lower relapse rate than the American version in, say, Delray Beach, Florida? Are the Taliban better at getting people off opioids than we are? And the answer is not just yes, but hell yes, way better, because they don't wean them off with methadone. This whole thing is a freaking lie. By the way, a lot of people get rich off that. You know who you are if you're listening. Some of them are big political donors who get rich on drug treatment programs. Disgusting. And it doesn't work. It works for some small percentage, but it doesn't work for most. That's for sure. And a lot of them die, and they never lead productive, joyful lives. And the Taliban have a faith-based, I know I'm going to probably get pulled off YouTube for saying this, but it's true. I'm saying this as a Christian, not a Muslim. They have a faith-based, no-nonsense, zero intoxicant policy in their rehab, and it works, and ours doesn't.
Well, it's a really good point because Afghanistan...
If you think drugs are a serious problem, and I do because I've lived it and seen it, yeah, it's a serious point. It's a serious point that we should think about.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, Afghanistan came to have the highest rates of drug use in the world, the highest addiction rate in the world, which is a tragedy, and it's something that was foisted on them, and is a source of profound misery and blight. And the Taliban's way of dealing with it once the U.S. left was to simply round up addicts. If they found them on the street, they would just put them onto buses, and it was involuntary. Take them to these detox wards where they're not given any kind of methadone or any kind of medication. They're just given, food, water, and a place to stay. And then they just wait it out. They're basically locked in there, and they suffer through withdrawals. And then once they're sober, they're allowed to leave at that